Hey everyone, Assassin's Creed the Ezio Collection is finally coming to the Switch, and today I'll be taking a look at the first game in the collection, Assassin's Creed 2, and going over my early impressions of the game. And thank you so much to Ubisoft for providing a review copy for this video. I played AC2 for the first time just 4 years ago, and really enjoyed my time with it, as it is so easy to get lost in the game's story, characters, and setting.
We sail for Spain.
I'm still here! Me! Ezio Auditore!
It is a good life we lead, brother.
The best. May it never change.
And may it never change us.
The Ezio Collection was previously released on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One in 2016 and included Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood and Revelations, the 3 games starring Ezio Auditore di Firenze, who many people consider to be their favorite assassin in the series. The Switch version includes those 3 games and the 2 short movies Assassin's Creed Lineage and Assassin's Creed Embers as well. The Ezio Collection also includes all previously released DLC, and as far as I know, the online portions have been removed that were in the PS3 and 360 initial releases. And if you have Ubisoft Connect, you can also get these same items as you could from the PlayStation 4 and 360 versions as well. This version also includes special enhancements specific for the Nintendo Switch, so we will be taking a look at those today as well. This is a review in progress, so to speak, since it's just for AC2. However, I plan on doing a full review of all 3 games in the Switch port, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on that. I played several hours into the game past the initial story setup and into where you start to be able to freely roam the world, so I could get a good sense of how the game looked everywhere. I even went back and played the opening bit on PC so I could compare the two and was actually surprised at the results, so I'll be going over that later. I've been wanting to talk about some of the earlier Assassin's Creed games for some time now and actually want to do a retrospective of certain games at some point. While I loved AC2 in my first playthrough in 2018, I was not sure how I would feel about the game in a second playthrough as it is a 13-year-old game at this point. But instantly the story grabbed a hold of me again, and now I just want to do full playthroughs of all 3 games again. I imagine most people here have played the games before and are looking to play them again on Switch on the go. However, if you are someone who has only played the newer Assassin's Creed games, you're in for an absolute treat. Yes, these games are different from the new ones, and it might take a bit getting used to as some areas of the games haven't aged perfectly, but I imagine the story and characters will still hook new players just like they did over a decade ago. So let's first go into the details of the collection for the Switch, and then I'll go over performance, as I know that is always a concern when it comes to Nintendo Switch ports. Firstly, when it comes to the physical version of the game, Assassin's Creed 2 is on the cartridge in English only. For other languages, there will be an audio DLC available to download, along with the movies in the collection. Altogether, everything digitally will be 35GB, 28GB if you have the cartridge. I still do not have the full info on the sizes of each individual game, so I will place that in a pinned comment down below once that information becomes available. The Switch version has HD rumble, touchscreen navigation for the menu, inventory, and map, alongside an increased size of HUD elements and text for better readability. I was surprised that a lot of the textures were updated for the current gen console versions when I was comparing the footage to the PC version. There are also extra effects in certain cutscenes as well, which add an extra flair to those scenes. It was interesting comparing the two because on PC you can of course set graphical options like anti-aliasing much higher, so textures do look smoother. However, the touch-up of assets for the Ezio Collection looks great. It's hard to say which is better because there's clearly a lot more detail as you can see here in specific areas, and it works quite well. And when compared to the PS4 version, it was enhanced for PS4 Pro, so running it on the PS5 at 4K makes everything much more clear, but overall it looks great for a Switch game, actually even better than I imagined it would. For those completely new to the series, I will do a very quick recap. As I said earlier, this is a collection of 3 games, and they actually have 2 overarching stories. You technically play as Desmond Miles, who uses a device called the Animus, which uses a person's genes to relive their ancestors' lives. This is important in Desmond's case because quite a few of his ancestors were famous assassins, who have been in conflict with Templars in some form or another for millennia. Desmond's ancestors hold the key to the location of powerful artifacts, Apples of Eden, that Templars want to use to reshape society according to their ideals. I'm doing fairly broad strokes for the storyline here, as I really do not want to spoil anything since the story is so good, and it would take far more time than I have available for an impressions video to explain the whole backstory. However, through reliving Desmond's ancestor Ezio's memories, he uncovers hidden secrets from the past which will have implications for the future of the world. And you get to live Ezio's life starting quite literally from his birth, which helps you gain a strong connection with the character. The setup for the story is basically a masterclass of being able to efficiently set up and build a world and character through gameplay. Yeah, some of it's gamified, but it works incredibly well and the story is fantastic. As things open up, you get to visit various cities during the Renaissance in Italy as you get to run across rooftops and perform leaps of faith off buildings. And you will be climbing a lot, as in the older games, sync points were used to clear up the map and add icons for activities across the open world. This is also before they doubled as fast travel spots, so you will either have to walk to your destination or use a carriage service to transfer you to different areas on the map. Parkour is quite different from the newer games. It's certainly evolved over the years, and if you have not played the older games, it might take a little getting used to. However, I personally really enjoy the older system as it's more involved, and at times there are climbing puzzles to even get to some sync points. And there's special parkour challenges to find hidden items that are incredibly fun, and it is something that I really wish would be added to the newer AC titles. While the parkour is mostly fluid once you get the hang of it, there will be times where Ezio will just kinda jump to his death instead of grabbing onto the ledge you wanted him to grab to. It can be frustrating at times, but it's pretty generous with the auto-saving, so it's usually not too big of an issue. I do wish this was something they touched up in the re-release along with a few other mechanics, but it doesn't mean that it's not functional in the confines of the game. Combat will be hit or miss for some people. I play a lot of older games, so I'm used to combat systems in this style, so I actually do enjoy it, although it is a little dated admittedly. It's mostly about waiting for the right opportunity to counterattack your enemy, although other weapons and abilities will unlock as you progress through the story. This is also before we got a dedicated crouch and sneak button, so stealth operates a little differently as well. You have to blend in with the environment and control your movement to not be noticed and take out your target. They did refine the gameplay over the Ezio Collection, so AC2 has aged somewhat in the gameplay department. In a sense, you will get to see how open world games progress throughout the years, and a lot of the foundation of what we have in current open world games were developed through this trilogy. Things might be in a simpler state than they are now, but AC2 was a huge jump from the first game in its open world design. Despite that, it's an incredible game because of the story and characters, but I mostly just want to go over the game's performance here and show some handheld footage. Overall, performance-wise, it's run very smoothly for me so far. I'm a little over 5 hours into the game and everything looks and feels great for a Switch game. It's 1080p 30, which is what I think we all expected. It's been pretty consistently locked at 30 FPS, outside of a few minor drops here and there. I tried stressing it out, parkouring through each city, and I didn't really see many noticeable frame rate drops. Where I did notice them was during certain quests. Specifically the quest to catch up with La Volpe, there were quite a few big hits to the frame rate. I obviously have not played through the entire game, but for the most part it does seem to be a pretty consistent 30 FPS, and frame rate drops are somewhat rare. I did notice a fair amount of pop-in, but only again in really specific areas. Like outside of Montegrone, while I was on my horse, there was a very noticeable pop-in of grass as I moved across the landscape. But then in Tuscany, it was not nearly as bad as the grass more naturally phased in as I rode on my horse. While climbing and parkouring across the city though, there's really not much pop-in on the ground level and only minor amounts on the rooftops. Even when looking out from a sync point, things look great and the draw distance is fantastic for a Switch game, although again I do know it's a 2009 game. The level design of the cities was a huge step up from the first game and still holds up even today, even though it might not be quite the same as a modern, open world game. I had so much fun just running around and exploring the city as it has an incredible sense of atmosphere. The only other issue I found was the map screen felt a little off, although it behaved the exact same way in the PC version, so I guess that's by design. From a technical aspect, AC2 runs great on the Switch outside of some minor issues, so now let's move on to handheld. I didn't have as much time to play handheld, but I did test out running around the city, so I'll show a short clip here so you can get a sense of how it runs. Unfortunately, I do not have any good way of capturing handheld footage, and the Switch's 30-second built-in function is not supported yet for this game, and I had to increase the game's brightness to the maximum setting because otherwise I had an insane amount of glare on the screen, so things will look washed out, but that's due to me turning the brightness all the way up. At a normal setting, the game looks totally fine.
Not my problem.
The rumble felt good and the touchscreen mechanics worked pretty well for me. On the map screen, I did have to zoom in pretty far to make it highlight what I wanted it to actually highlight, because sometimes if I was zoomed out too far, it wouldn't actually highlight the spot I was pointing at, but otherwise it works very well. While I do think using the Joy-Cons will be faster in most cases compared to the touchscreen, it was pretty fun to flip through the database entries with the touchscreen controls. And when it came to the map screen, it was quicker and easier to use the touch controls to set map markers to the next spot I wanted to travel to, of course once I zoomed in a bit. The graphics do take a noticeable hit, and I did see more poppin', but performance-wise, I really didn't see many, or really any frame rate hits, as it seemed more stable than even in the docked mode. Overall, I actually thought it played really well in handheld mode, and I think I'll be playing a lot more that way as I go through the entire collection. So again, these are just my early impressions, and do keep in mind this is just for AC2 as I have not played Brotherhood or Revelations yet, but it does seem like a good Switch port so far. Once I go through the other two games, I'll give my full review, but its performance does seem better than the other Assassin's Creed releases I have played on the Switch. It's $40 USD, and until I play all three games, I really can't comment on if it's worth it yet or not. I'll have to see the performance of the other two games first. However, removing performance from the equation, it's an incredible collection of games. And I really hope the other games run as smoothly as AC2 has so far. I do wish everything was on the cartridge, and unfortunately that does seem to be a trend with Switch games lately. Personally, I prefer buying physical copies, but have stopped doing so for this reason. So far, I'd say I'd recommend it more for people looking to play in handheld mode. While the games are stuck at 30 FPS on PS4 and PS5, they did do FPS boost for Xbox Series consoles, which makes everything run much smoother. And if you have a modern PC, you should be able to run the game at 60 FPS, if not much higher than that. The only thing with the PC version is that it does not have updated textures, and I did run into some issues with mapping the controls to a controller, so it's not perfect. But given how difficult it is to get a new Xbox or PC, I know those options are not easily available for most people. Anyways, I'll go into more detail in the full review. I just wanted to do a quick impressions video for people interested in buying the game on launch day. Thanks so much for watching, I'll see you all in the next video.